I'm Derek Woodard-Lehman. I direct the Miller Institute here at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. The Miller Institute is part of the Neighborhood Collaborative. The Neighborhood Collaborative coordinates the seminary's community-facing initiatives. Our mission is to connect the learned theology of the academy with the lived theology of the community in order to form Christian leaders to transform church and society. Our guest today to talk about neighborhood theology is Lisa Franklin Robinson. Lisa's no stranger to the seminary. She holds many degrees, a Master of Divinity, a Doctor of Ministry, as well as a graduate certificate in urban ministry. Lisa's also served the seminary as a member of the Alumni Council and the Board of Trustees. Lisa's also a leader in her own neighborhood. She is the president of the North Braddock Council. She is executive director of both the Mon Metro Chamber of Commerce and the Mon Metro Business Equity Initiative. She's also a commissioner for the Eastern Regional Mon Valley Police Department. Welcome, Lisa, and thanks for coming and taking time of what must be a very, very busy schedule.
Always, but thanks for having me.
I'm excited you're here. There's so much to say, but let's begin at the beginning.
Okay.
Can you tell us about your neighborhood, North Braddock particularly, and the Mon Valley more generally? Where are those places? Even longtime residents of Pittsburgh might not know that part of town. Who lives there and what kind of community are they?
So North Braddock is about 12 to 13 miles outside east of the city of Pittsburgh. It's a community that used to consist of 16,000. It's now only around 4,100 people. We were the bedroom community of Braddock, which served as our business district, at one time having over 400 businesses.
Wow.
When the mills were thriving and when Westinghouse was in East Pittsburgh. The reason why I mention up front Braddock and North Braddock is because people think that they're the same place. We have two different mayors, two different councils. Now we have one police.
Okay.
We now have moved towards a regional focus because Braddock, which used to be a very thriving community, is around 12 to 1,400 people now. East Pittsburgh are close to the same. Rankin, it's another neighboring community around the same. So collectively, we help to form the Eastern Regional Mon Valley Police because policing is expensive. So we pull together to serve in that capacity, and we're still like a little over 10,000 together.
Okay.
We've also, in the past probably 8 or 9 years, formed a community group, regional, called the Bend community. So that's Braddock, East Pittsburgh, and North Braddock. We're all, I would say, we come together because we're all lower income, underserved communities. We're all about the same distance away from downtown Pittsburgh. We're close to everything. That's the one thing we love to say because we're close to the north, the south, the east, and the west. But we believe that a rising tide floats all boats, and so we decided to join forces to do some things together. We have a joint comprehensive plan. We have joint code enforcement. We have joint sanitation, and we are looking at other projects to attack and to come together collaboratively. So the thing that's funny is that this one community now becomes a larger community, and we believe seriously in community collaboration. Believe it or not, North Braddock is about 50-50 racially.
Okay.
At some points it was more white than black, and then right over the line more black than white, but mostly 50-50 racially. I believe that Braddock is probably more predominantly black. We all are communities that are have land that makes up the U.S. Steel Edgar Thomson plant, which is the first steel mill in the United States of America. We all were involved in that Nippon Steel merger deal. We also have similar problems. We learned in urban ministry here in the certificate program what the definition of urban was. And one of the things that described urban, even though we were considered suburbia, is do urban problems migrate with people because of gentrification out. Unfortunately, the problems come out, but the resources don't come out. And so we realize now that we really have to collaborate to get our resources to actually address the problems that are coming, that are here. Poverty, low income, we have health issues, we have infrastructure issues, and the like. The other thing that I'd like to point out is the difference between a city and a borough.
Okay.
So
tell us about that.
North Braddock, and East Pittsburgh are boroughs, which means the power resides in the council. The mayors are, we tease, and mayors don't really like it, that they kiss babies and cut ribbons.
Okay.
But the borough council is the one that does the lifting. In a city, it's reversed.
Sure.
Now, the thing that's interesting in some of these suburban communities, they are cities. Duquesne is a city, Clairton is a city, McKeesport is a city. Across the river, we're all boroughs.
Okay.
And so our governance is different.
Does that different governance make it easier or harder to do the kind of collaborations that you just described, sharing expenses for services like policing, sanitation, et cetera, coming together around shared concerns like income level, air quality, et cetera?
I just think where people are involved, that's where things become difficult. The more people, the more ideas, the more opinions. However, pain points draw people together. If we're all suffering, or if we all have a common enemy, it tends to unify. And so I think because we were suffering so much, it made it easier because we all have a similar, we have similar obstacles to overcome. The other thing that I think, which is interesting, is the leaders of those three communities in the Bend community, and that's really where I'll sit with it mostly today. The three presidents of council, one of which I am, we really like each other. We tend to look at it as a marriage, and so we do have date nights, like we do things outside of just business as usual to kind of foster the relationship. If one has a need, we all go and address it. If one has a celebration, we all come to celebrate. And I think that's where the spirit and the theological move, where theology really stands up in the process, because we're people involved and hearts are involved. We really need God.
Thanks for introducing us to those communities and giving us a little bit of a picture of who lives there and what life is like. You already made the transition to neighborhood theology, this idea that grace and place are tied together, that where we are and who we're with are not accidents, but are purposeful, intentional, and significant. So how do you see grace in your particular place, and how do you respond in your leadership and your service to those places?
So I'll have to go back a little bit. I'm a fourth generation resident of that community. And now I have 6 generations that live there. My son, his wife, and my grandson live across the street from my husband and me. So the problem, well, I don't want to say problem, but the responsibility that I have is I remember when our space looked different. I remember how it was to be able to run to the corner store and get bread and candy. I remember what it was like to have 40, 50 kids on the hill playing. I remember when the community was really thriving. And my parents are both deceased. I live in the house that they built, and my parents literally are walking distance from my house because the cemetery is right down the street. And other ancestors. So I feel a responsibility to bring back and reform and even transform that space. With that being said, to bring freedom and flourishing in a space where there's captivity is something that moves me. It's part of my call. And the other 2 communities with the needs and the suffering, when I ran with my tagline, which was hope in action. Because there was a lot of hopelessness and despair. You could almost taste it and smell it in the air. And so we knew we had to gain the trust of Mon Valleyans, but we also had to do something. The theological drive, the move of God, and the things that remain in my heart are we can transform the community. So we incorporate prayer. We've walked the neighborhoods to pray. And for myself and some of the other leaders, prayer is a big part of, okay, now what's the next thing we do? It's actually the reason why I got into politics, because I was so against it. I thought
You were so against politics.
I was so against being involved in politics.
Okay.
I had been raised in a household where my parents were always active in civil rights and community engagement, and I saw the dirt that people did and all the fights that had to be enacted and fought in wars that had to be fought and won to get just small things done. I encountered through my parents' movements and the things that they were involved in, racism and just manipulation and dirty things. And so for me, I never wanted to do this. But I had a friend in another neighborhood who was already in leadership, and she had been in leadership for years. But she was a believer. And I said, oh, I don't think I could. She goes, no, you should really be involved. I said, well, I don't like the dirt. She said, I'll teach you how to move as a Christian in this space. And, you know, just from being in seminary, I remember reading the book by Aubrey Hendricks, The Politics of Jesus, and thinking, Jesus was one of the most political people that we could even name. And I have been through community organizing training, and I remember, you know, what power is and how you can use it for good. And so, but she taught me the bare bones of like, okay, here's something coming up. We pray about it. We ask God to show us who we connect with. There's always people that connect. And then we ask what the strategy is. And then we pray for the resources, and we move in, and we move like we have the resources. If we believe that this is what we're called to do, we move like we have the resources. And that, I believe, is one of the things that helped us to recently be awarded $1,015,000 for a project that we had been working on praying for over 2 years. So I know you hear it. I usually, the mission of in the Great Commission, combined with the mission of Christ as expressed in Luke 4, those are the things that motivate, that I use as my own personal statement and move and motivation. Those are the two things theologically when I'm exegeting a community to bring, where's their captivity, where can we bring freedom, and then how can we engage to bring them Christ.
Yeah, that's great. You used that word calling a moment ago, and vocational discernment, as you know, is one of the focal emphases of the Miller Institute. So neighborhood theology isn't just about grace and place, that's where we start, but we look at grace and place and the people in particular in a place as a means through which we're called and a place to which we're called.
Calling is very important to me, and vocation, and you really have to be called, especially when you're in some of these rougher vocations where a lot of yourself has to be poured out. I don't like the word selflessness.
Okay. Say more about that.
Because you have to be intentional with self when you're giving out so much. So to say that you're not, I like to use you're not self-centered, but self is all involved in selflessness work or pouring out of self. You have to be intentional, and you have to be led by the Spirit, because some of the things that you do that you think you're doing a good work, you could be hurting someone. So I believe call and vocation is so important, and it would have been really important to me to have people who were a little bit more intentional in my life. I had mentors, but people who really could steward a person who was relational. Where do you go when you look at a college catalog? Relational, where is that? Someone has to translate that where that type of skill set and gift fits. And so we developed, we meaning the Mon Metro Business Equity Initiative, a process called the Vocational Insight Space. And so we work with 16-year-olds all the way up to whatever. If you're 80 and you feel like you don't know what you're called to do, we work with you too. And we put them through a process of with coaches and with different types of testing, and then different kind of testing in the world. We're shadowing opportunities and things like that. So that has been my heartbeat during that week with Dr. Owens. I think that's where it kind of opened itself up, and I started to begin to understand that there was purpose in what I gifted at. And it was being here that brought that out.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the vocational insight space, particularly some of the assessment instruments that you use that give people a framework for thinking about who they are, how they're gifted, how their attitude and aptitude might fit with different trajectories of work and witness?
So we actually use professional executive coaches who are believers, though. So even though it's well, I don't believe in the secular and the sacred. Everything is sacred if the Lord, if the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, right? And so
we might think about it as faith forward or faith underneath,
right,
who you're engaging and how explicit the religious commitments might be.
So we can't. It's not that we can't, but we're not putting it out as a faith forward. But faith is all embedded in and through the whole process. And so there's some discerning for us. And prayer with us, but then we put them through some personality testings. We use different ones, and then after the personality tests, then they get to choose a coach because you have to be able to work with the person.
One question that we ask all our guests in conclusion is, what wisdom or maybe one piece of advice would you give to someone engaging in this sort of work, particularly with youth or young adults who wants to come alongside as a friend and a guide who wants to help them and empower their growth and development, particularly around this piece of calling and vocational discernment? What's one thing you've learned in your own work that you think is crucial to being able to successfully help others find their vocation and come to understand their calling?
Well, you have to fight against looking at a person and saying, well, I feel like you're this, and starting to silo them in that way. You have to really lean in and listen to the Lord about how this person is wired. I mean, there are certain things that just because we're human beings that you'll start to hear resonate. But the thing that I'm reminded more than anything is that I'm a steward. And it's God's call on their life. When I was called, when I heard the voice of God saying that I've called you to set the captives free, I had no understanding of what that was. Okay. I mean, it happened at a study that we were doing, and I literally had an encounter with the Spirit at that place, and I searched for a person to be able to answer that for me. I was in a Southern Baptist church at the time who didn't believe women were called to do anything much. I mean, we were called to service, but not to lead.
That's challenging.
It was. And so I was asking, like, what does it mean? And there was a woman there who said, it's God's call on your life, and God will perfect and strengthen and give clarity to that call as you walk with God. And so I thought, oh, okay, I got it, but I didn't really get it. What I'm learning with this is we give people tools to be able to access God, whether it's, like you said, faith forward or faith underneath. We're still giving them tools to be able to give the hearing, because the call comes from God on their life, not from us. And so we have to be able to give access is a big word for us. Access to God, but also access to resources, access to what actually exists out there. I think that's where AI can play a big role, because we can access things more quickly and more broadly in a short span of time through AI mechanisms than we ever could. But we guide, it's the fact that no eye has seen, neither ear heard, nor has it entered into the heart of man what God has for us. And so that's the scripture that resounds, that says, you are the steward over the people that I've led to you. Listen for what I'm giving them access to, and then just figure out how to get the access. We're trying to get them the water and help for some of them to reclaim or re-experience or be able to reimagine and touch, to be thirsty again. But we're not placing upon them. We walk alongside, and in the process, we learn stuff too about ourselves, about them, and about God. So as long as we handle them loosely, but with guardrails, but loosely, I think that's where we're effective.
Lisa Franklin Robinson, thanks so much for taking time to talk this morning. And thank you all for watching. Talk soon.